Hi guys. Welcome. Um, I'm so excited. Hi. I'm so excited to be having a conversation today with Congressman Joaquin Castro. It is Latinx Heritage Month, so we're going to be talking about representation and diversity in media and in Hollywood. So for those of you, my friends, okay. For those of you who don't know me, I am Jeanine Mason. I am an actor. I am first generation Cuban American. I'm from Miami, Florida. I am a proud Latina, and I am quite fortunate. I am a Latina leading lady on a network television series, Roswell, New Mexico, on the CW. I am therefore very passionate about representation. So I'm so excited to be speaking today with Representative Joaquin Castro. So let me tell you a little bit about him. He is been serving on the House of Representatives for the 20th Congressional District in Texas since 2013. He is a second generation Mexicano. He is a native of San Antonio, Texas. He loves books, which makes me love you. And he's also the chairman of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. So, without further ado, let's add him in here. He's coming. Ooh.
Hello.
Hi.
Good to be with you.
So nice to be speaking to you in person.
Yes. I heard you. Thank you for the intro too. That was wonderful. I go on these things with my brother and he never gives me an intro. So thank you.
Julian, come on, listen. My sister's my hype man, so I can't rat her, but I feel like maybe my brother, he'd probably be like, whatever, that's Jeanine, you know?
Well, that's how my brother treats me, so don't feel too bad. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, okay, let's get into it because I want to get to stuff. I'm so happy to have you. And already I've seen people in here being like, he's my congressman, which is awesome.
So, hello, any San Antonians out there?
Right? Hello, Texas. Yeah. So why is this so important? Why is representation in media for diversity, especially in Hollywood, why is that important? And why have you made it a top priority for the Congressional Hispanic Caucus?
Yeah, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus is often associated. So there's 39 members of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, and we're often associated with one issue mostly, which is the issue of immigration. And we do deal with the issue of immigration a lot, particularly in the last few years, because of Donald Trump has been so hostile to immigrants and asylum seekers. But as you know, there are other issues that also the Latino community cares greatly about, whether it's education, healthcare, jobs, climate change, all of that. But one of those things that I think affects a lot of those issues and how Latinos and Latinas are perceived in this country and how we're stereotyped, and oftentimes the limitations that are placed on your ability to play certain roles in Hollywood or get certain jobs in American society is how the American media portrays Latinos and Latinas, and also the very bad underrepresentation of Latinos in Hollywood. And so we've been working on this for a few years, but what really made me put my foot on the gas was really what happened last August in El Paso, Texas, in my home state, where you had a madman that drove 10 hours and killed 23 people because he called them Hispanic invaders to Texas. And, and also injured 23 people more. And I said at the time, and I believe that there is this dangerous nexus between the hostile political rhetoric that you hear about immigrants being rapists and criminals and so forth, and then too often the stereotypes that people will see when they turn on their television screen or when they go to a movie or even when they consume hard news, so to speak. And so because of that, we decided to take this issue on.
I'm so grateful you did. And I see that firsthand, where it's a limited window that we have of what are the possible roles for Latinx people. And even now, in all the effort that's been put forward in let's make more of it, let's make more of these roles available, they still fall within a very limited framework of what is a possibility that a Latino or a Latina can be. And I know you must feel this way too, growing up in San Antonio, but growing up in Miami, we're limitless. Like we're everything.
Yeah.
We're the this, the that, the doctor, the la carreta, you know what I mean? Like we're everywhere. And Hollywood is still catching up to that. And it's part of the reason why I feel so lucky to play a scientist. I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, that shouldn't be a suspension of disbelief, because the truth of the matter is it's not. If you look at what it is out there, it's not.
No, that's absolutely right. You know, and I was just on speaking to Dr. Stacy Smith's class at USC, and they've done an incredible amount of work on analyzing the media and the roles, for example, that Latino and Latina actors get. And oftentimes, it's stereotyped roles, right? You're either the gangbanger or the drug dealer, right? Or some other kind of nefarious role. And part of the challenge here is to start to break away from that, but also for us to be able to tell stories where Latinos are seen in their fullness. You know, I grew up in a neighborhood that was probably 95% Mexican American, and you know, and so you saw people that were regular people that you know drove to work every day or took the bus to work every day, had normal lives, and weren't just like these cardboard characters that you will often see on television or in film. And so it's been a long way coming the last 2 years working on this, but all of us, I mean, there's a lot of other folks working on it as well, but I feel like there's finally some momentum for change.
I'm so happy to hear that. You know, it's it really is what you're saying, where it's what we see, we then take in as truth and understanding. And we know that policy is often behind what is social change, what is popular culture. So this is why it's so important for media and for Hollywood to be putting forward what is authentic, so that people understand what they're hearing elsewhere is a whole bunch of mierda for the Spanish speakers.
Well, and I wanted to ask you, because you and you still are a dancer and actor, right? But about your own journey in Hollywood and how that came about and the challenges that you faced as a Latina getting to where you are now.
You know, it's crazy. When I first I've been doing this for 10 years now. And when I first got to Hollywood, and really that's a short time when you think about at the beginning, the conversations were that I was lucky my name was Mason, that my last name was Mason, because it wouldn't give me away as a Latina. To imagine in that short time, the sadness that I think back on the beginning, I think it's the immigrant mentality. It wasn't something that I let weigh me down. But now when I look at it in retrospect, I'm like, I was limited. And it was just like, well, then I'll do what I can with the framework that we exist in Hollywood. And to go from that to where I am now, where I'm getting to play a woman who is Latina, and not only that, but her Latinidad is central to our show. It's honored in the narrative, it's explored on our show. It's not just like a quota check, you know?
Yeah, sure.
That's huge. So I feel very indebted to people like you, who like across lines have worked for so long and whose efforts I'm feeling the result of right now. I'm standing on giants' shoulders, and I don't feel as if it is a choice. I feel as if it is a duty for me to continue the conversations and to continue the work and to like brace the door open and like bring in some friends, you know, and I'm trying to do that right now. I'm trying to do that particularly when it comes to marginalized groups within our marginalized group. So we shoot in New Mexico, you know, we're not far. So it's very Southwestern, and I feel what I'm hearing now is where we're lacking is in Indigenous and in Afro-Latino stories. Sure. So making sure that our show, which is Southwestern, and it is Roswell, New Mexico, is honoring that. And luckily I have a great team, and everybody's absolutely on board for that as well, you know?
No, that's great. And, you know, in addition to Hollywood and entertainment, we also worked on diversity in media in hard news. So like we just met with NBC News today. We've met with CBS. And then the other part is publishing, because as you know, in the publishing industry, and a lot of films start off as books, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, so diversity in publishing and the representation of Latinos and Latinas at publishing houses as authors, And I'll tell you, one of the most remarkable and poignant, I guess, moments for me in all of this was actually a meeting that we had.
Yeah, please
with,
tell me.
Yeah, it was a meeting with the Association of American Publishers. There had been a book, American Dirt, that had been controversial some months back, right? Um, and so we were on this meeting with the Association of American Publishers, and one of the people on there was a CEO of a top 5 publishing company in the country. So this is a company that supplies secondary education, public schools, textbooks, university textbooks, and then also publishes fiction and nonfiction books. And so there was a point in the meeting where I asked this gentleman, the CEO, whether he could name 3 Latino or Latinas who had made significant contributions to American history, basically historical figures, right? And he thought about it for like 5 or 10 seconds.
What he said.
And he finally said, no, I can't, right? And he actually wasn't trying to be rude, like he wasn't trying to be dismissive. This very highly educated man, very accomplished man, probably in his mid to late 50s, just could not name 3 Latinos or Latinas who had made significant contributions to American history. And even though I was kind of frustrated in the moment, I thought that's pretty consistent, I think, with larger American society, because we've been written out of the history textbooks. Like, our histories have not been told, whether it's Cuban Americans, Mexican Americans, Puerto Ricans, have not been told in American history books or state history books. If you're in Texas or California, I can't speak to Florida as well, right? But I would imagine you have the same challenges there.
Absolutely.
And so what happens then is that you have a large percentage of the country that really doesn't know where to place Latinos in American society. Like, they don't know where you fit in to the country's history or what contributions anybody from your community has made to the success and the prosperity and the development of this nation. And that's a very vulnerable position to be in as a community, because what happens then is that people are more likely to believe the stereotypes, because that's the only thing that they see and hear. And so it just reminded me of the fact that we have a lot of work to do in telling the narrative, right? Like the story of Latino history. And again, it's different because it's, in the Southwest, it tends to be Mexican American, and then you have Cuban American and Puerto Rican and Colombian American, everything. So it's not a single history necessarily, but all of it is important and has to be told.
I am so with you. It's important, I think, for young people, especially coming up in their respective industries, to be very aware of the history of what has been accomplished before them. I know that I very often encounter journalists who tell me, well, must be a first. And there's a lot about, Latinas leading shows that does, count as a first. But when I think of the history of Latinos in Hollywood, I mean, Desi Arnaz, he was I Love Lucy. I mean, he led that show. He went on to be a producer. I mean, you have to know that you are a part of a huge legacy. And I hope that gives you the gift it gives me, which is saying, it's not all me just like plowing new land. I am supported. This has been done before, and I'm just going to try to do another inch, a centimeter if I'm lucky. So
you're doing great. Yeah. You're doing
thank you.
Excellent.
So what about, is there policy that can be put in place and that should be put in place in your?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we've looked at different things. For example, states like New York and California that do have pretty ambitious film incentives, tax incentive programs for film and television production. We have tried to reach out to the legislatures to get diversity and inclusion riders either put in there or renewed so that they're stronger. So that's a piece of it. But I've also raised the question, I had the op-ed in Variety where I raised the question about tax incentives, because look, unless we can make sure that this large group of Americans, Latinos are about 18.5% of the country now and continuing to grow, right? Unless you can make sure they're included, then at some point you have to wonder about giving tax credits to fund exclusion, right? Like you're literally, like, for example, the Los Angeles Times, this is on the hard news side, but we were having a meeting with their CEO, their editorial board, a lot of their folks. And this is the the members of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus and the LA Times last week. And they only asked us like one question. And the question really was whether we would support two pieces of legislation. One of the pieces of legislation was about tax breaks, basically, for local newspapers. Well, and I said, yes, I mean, local journalism is incredibly important to our democracy, to investigating wrongs, just everything, particularly in the moment that we're in now. So I said, like, I'm really inclined to support that. But at the same time, we're talking about an industry. Take the LA Times, for example. In a city of Los Angeles that's between 40 and 50% Latino, the LA Times is like 13%, right? Like its newsroom is like 13%.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, you know, but at what point are you asking us to support and vote for our own exclusion in an industry? Like, you're asking us to support a tax break, but you're kind of also asking us to support our own exclusion, because we're by and large being left out, right?
Exactly.
So
it doesn't service us.
yeah, absolutely. So I want to support the entertainment industry. I want to support journalism. At the same time, it's like y'all need to really come along and diversify so that you truly reflect the diversity of America.
Absolutely. I know that you just made me think of something. I know you have programs you've done in the past where you've helped college students go and do their like tours,
Sure.
and, you know, and I think about whether there is policy or program that could support this. One of our writers in the writer's room, I asked her for some questions. I asked a few of them for some question, and they're so excited. And one of them is from Texas, Ariana Quinones, so she's very excited. She's a big fan. But Ariana had said, you know, there was this conversation started on Twitter by Liz Alper. She's a television writer. It's called #PayUpHollywood. And it was really about how, yes, and all of these, you know, how impossible it is, these like hard circumstances and low pay that assistants and entry level positions in Hollywood are, and for how long they're expected to maintain that. And it's just it's not possible for people who don't have financial, you know, support and stability, or just period support and stability. So that's another thing that I think maybe that's a place we can start, is really making sure that there's a viable ramp for people to have a place to grow and go in the industry, you know.
I agree. And, you know, it's interesting because in Congress, we've tried to hold ourselves accountable in the same way on issues of inclusion. For example, on our committees, right? Like if you were to go visit Congress, as you know, there's committees on different subjects: energy and commerce, foreign affairs, the intelligence committee. We started measuring the diversity of expert witnesses that are called in front of the committees, because there are a lot of women and people of color or in academia at nonprofits who often are not called as witnesses and asked for their testimony. And we tend to go to the same folks over and over. You know, so we've tried to change internally. But one of the other changes that we've tried to make on the foreign affairs side is we're working on it now, doing paid internships at the State Department, for example. And we instituted paid internships in Congress now, so that people don't have to work for free, which is, for generations, you know, you couldn't go intern in Washington unless you could afford to pay the high rents there, you know, or your family could help you. So that kept a lot of people, including a lot of people of color, from participating in internships in DC. And I would imagine it's the same thing in Hollywood, that cost to keep so many people from even walking in the door.
Oh, I love that. That's so exciting to hear. Absolutely. You know, it's my brother. My brother worked on season 1 of Roswell, New Mexico.
Oh, really?
And he just graduated from USC, and we were all just so excited that he was the PA on the show, that he would have an opportunity to make some money. And then, you know, I let him live with me, so he saved a little.
He subsidized his rent, I guess. Yeah.
Exactly. So, you know.
Yeah. But, you know, in talking about this issue of diversity, and I hope that folks will go, there is a clip of Marlon Brando discussing this issue in the 1970s, and folks should go look it up. In 1972, well, actually, I guess in early 73, he had won Best Actor for The Godfather, which came out in 1972, right? A classic movie. And he went on one of the talk shows later that year and was talking basically about portrayal in Hollywood with respect to Native Americans, and said, you know, imagine what it's like for a young Native American child to always see themselves as the bad guys in the Westerns of the time, the Cowboys and Indians films of the time, the effect that that has on a group of people, and then also the effect that it has on the larger American society and how they see you. And I think that that's still true today for so many groups of folks. You know?
I remember when he didn't go up for, or I remember seeing the video, I should say.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I saw the video when he didn't go up to get that award, and he had that, you know, Native woman come up and people booing her. And I thought, like,
Yeah.
You know, how times have changed and how much progress we've made and how far we still have to go. But I mean, really, that's the exact example of what you were saying earlier, you know, having the conversation, finding places where there is a platform, there is a possibility for it to become social change and then for it to become policy change, you know, political change. So that's incredible. I feel very connected to taking care of our community here, you know, especially given the year we've had with COVID putting so much of the industry out of work. You know, we have a very diverse crew in that they are local New Mexicans. And we know now how disproportionately affected minorities were by the impact of COVID-19 and how they're going to be feeling it longer. So to get our crew back to work is obviously, we're 2 weeks in here now.
So you're in New Mexico, like y'all have been filming and everything, and
we start this week, and
are you in a bubble? Are y'all like nobody can leave and all that stuff?
Pretty much. Like my castmates, you know, it's going to be a lot of them. A lot of Michael Vlamis, who's one of my castmates, who's quite a character.
Yeah, I hope you get along with everybody because everybody's going to be together. It's like the NBA bubble in Florida, right?
Yeah, we get along, thankfully. But, you know, it's that balance of being a part of, wanting to be a part of the conversation and get our story, which we think is really important and is gonna, and it's timely and needs to be especially heard now, but also making sure we're safe. And a lot of that has to do with, we feel so lucky to be here. We feel so lucky to be shooting in Santa Fe. It is so beautiful here. And these cities that accommodate us and that we get to then give back to and say thank you, and thank you for letting us honor your culture and hold us accountable for doing that right. And so that these crew members get to go home to their families at the end of the day is obviously our big priority, but it has been an interesting effect on our industry. I can imagine you're seeing it everywhere.
Yeah, just the devastation. First in terms of people's health, it's just been terrible. You know, I lost my stepmom to COVID in July.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and my dad got it, and he's 80 years old, but he was mostly asymptomatic, which is just strange that people's bodies handle this in a different way, right?
Totally.
But then to watch the economy also, parts of it at least, crumble and slowly come back has just been something else. And I can only hope for better days ahead, politically in every way possible.
Come on, November, pull through.
Yeah, you know, so that everybody can get back on their feet. Hopefully we get a vaccine as soon as possible, you know, and be able to fully bounce back.
Totally. So, okay, I have to ask you because I'm curious, what's your voting plan and how does a congressman vote? Do you just like call it in or do you like mail it in like us normos?
I wish. Yeah, no, I actually voted yesterday.
Did
the
you?
early voting has started in Texas. Yeah. Where do you vote? Do you vote are you an LA voter? Or
I vote in Florida. So
Florida.
I got my absentee ballot. I started filling it out today, looking at all the voter guides and, you know, getting ready to send it in.
Yeah, well, I voted yesterday in person, and it actually took me, even though the line didn't seem that long, it took me about an hour to get through it, you know, and there were other people that tweeted at me and wrote comments on Facebook that it took them 2 hours or 4 hours, you know, which is an incredibly long time to have to wait just to cast your vote.
Absolutely.
But that was my plan.
Good.
And so I'm glad that I was able to get it done because I actually think that the lines, especially as you get closer to the end and on election day, are just going to pick up. I mean, there's so much energy. People, you know, just looking forward to voting finally after 4 years, that the lines are going to be pretty huge, I think.
Absolutely. It was really, it was just, aside from everything, even the last 4 years, it was really fun today to fill out that box for Kamala Harris.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
was like,
She's great.
here
Yeah.
we go, 2020, turn it around.
Yeah.
So, well,
Yeah.
this has been so wonderful. I'm such a fan, and I just am so appreciative of your efforts and of everything you're doing. And yeah, let us know anything else you want to say. How can we support what you're doing, and all this, like these initiatives? Is there anything that in particular that we can do to help the
Well,
cause?
yeah, I mean, like especially for the folks that are listening, I would say let your member of Congress know that this is an issue that you care about. Because I'll be honest with you, when we started this initiative at the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, there were others in Congress and even a few within our own members who wondered, like, why are we taking on this issue of what's going on in Hollywood? Like, we're legislators in DC and this is the entertainment industry. But I kept reminding folks, like, the images that come out of media,
Mm-hmm.
this is the main way that a lot of Americans get their image of a group of people. And it just doesn't just affect a Latino or Latina that's trying to be, land a certain role. It also affects an ordinary person that's that's applying to be a bus driver or an accountant or a teacher, that it
Mm-hmm.
affects everybody from a certain community. And by the way, that's not just true of the Latino community. That's true of the Native American community, Muslim Americans, African Americans, Asian Americans, and so forth. So these issues actually do matter. I see them as foundational issues
Mm-hmm.
to all, how you're portrayed and perceived, to almost everything else. So I hope people
Mm-hmm.
will let their members of Congress and their elected officials know that they care.
I absolutely will. Raise your hand in here if you're going to do the same. And I
Yeah.
agree with you. I mean, Define American, they just released the findings of a study where they saw, after so much of their efforts, I know they've been involved in Roswell, New Mexico. They were involved in Grey's Anatomy when I played a
Right.
doctor recipient on that show. And we now know that we are seeing the result is people's opinions are changing. Their hearts are being opened. They're supporting policy that takes care of undocumented people, and they are more likely to speak out against the separation of children at the border.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's exactly what you're speaking to. So everybody
Yeah.
call up their congressperson. We got work to do.
And thank you for having me, and congratulations on all of your success
Thank you.
over the years, and much best of luck in the coming years as well.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. So nice to chat with you, and happy Latinx Heritage Month.
Likewise.
Bye,
Take
bye,
care.
bye. Bye, guys. Thanks for joining us.